This is a piece of rutilated quartz rough. Rutilated quartz is a variety of quartz which contains needle-like inclusions of rutile. These inclusions mostly look golden, but they can also look silver, copper red, or deep black. In this stone, I can see golden needles, red or pink needles, and black kind of needles. I don't see any silver ones in this piece of rough, at least not yet. Normally in gemstones, you try to get rid of inclusions, as inclusions generally reduce the value of the gemstone. However, in rutilated quartz, the shapes, colors, and dispersion of the rutile are the reason for the value of the gemstone. Rutile is made of titanium oxide, or TiO2 for you science wizards. It is found throughout the world, and rutile, when found as a rock, not in needles in other stones like quartz, is mined for titanium and quite valuable. Rutilated quartz is found in many places around the globe, including Brazil, Australia, and the USA. So get your hiking boots on and start poking around for some nice rutilated quartz samples. I have made a black mark with my Sharpie marker, indicating where I will trim this piece of rough with my trim saw and make a kind of square stone out of this rough for today's design. After I cut this stone with my trim saw, I'll put it in refractol so we can see what it looks like inside this piece of quartz. Okay, we put our stone in refractol. You can see all the rutile inside the stone. We see the stone is fractured, so it has internal fractures in the quartz. But we're going to cut it and see what we see based on all this rutile in it, and see what we come up with. So it's not an internally flawless stone with rutile, but let's cut it and see. For this large piece of rutilated quartz, which is now kind of square shaped, I need a squarish design to use. Faceting Club websites and newsletters are an excellent source for gem cutting designs. I found a very interesting square design on the U.S. Facetors Guild website that was created by Steve and Nancy Attaway of the New Mexico Facetors Guild. The design is called the Attaway Old Mine. Let me show you how to find this design on the web. The header of the design says some revisions have been made by Araya Akvan, Jeff Threefold, and Tom Mitchell. So it looks like some great gem cutting designers have tweaked Steve and Nancy design for some upcoming competition. So don't worry if you don't understand all the information on the gem cutting diagram. I made a two-part video to explain all the abbreviations, ratios, and other information. If you have any questions, take a look at these videos. So if I cut this stone correctly, this is how it should look from the top, the side, and the bottom. The numbers and letters on the design correspond to the cutting instructions. All right, to start cutting our rutilated quartz, the first set of instructions is to cut the pavilion, the first tier or row, at an angle of 53.77 degrees. So we set our dial indicator, our DAD, to 53.77, and we'll cut 8 facets around the 4 sides, so 2 facets on each of the 4 sides of our stone, which we've kind of squared up a little bit, and we're going to cut to a temporary center point. So the way we put the stone into our machine is at the 96 tooth. So the 96 tooth, we want any of the 4 corners, they'll do, to be horizontal. So this is a big stone, that's fine, just to set it up just like that is fine. You've got this side at the 96. So you we just tighten the set screw to lock the stone in place. And now we're ready to cut the first set of instructions. I'm going to use a 240 grit topper lap. More and more I'm not using the 200 grits. I'm using the 300 grits only, but most cutters, anything, use 100 grit and above to do their preforming. So I think I'll be okay with the 240. Again, I wouldn't use 100 grit. I wouldn't use anything rougher than 100 grit. I have a 60 grit Crystal Light steel lap that I bought when I was a brand new, first starting out. It's too rough for the stones and it causes substructure damage. I would not recommend ever buying a 60 grit lap on gemstones. Okay, I've preformed our rutilated quartz with using the first two sets of instructions, the first cut at the pavilion and the girdle cut. Except the first cut calls for cutting to a temporary center point, which means I would keep cutting these facets until this opening closes up and there's just a point there. The problem with doing that is the only way, as I cut this down, it's just going to cut the pavilion down further and further to the point where I don't have enough space left below in the bottom part of the girdle to cut the upper half of the stone or the crown, and therefore I have to cut the girdle in, making a smaller stone. I don't want to make a smaller than necessary stone, so I'm going to go on to the next set of instructions, because actually the permanent center point is with instruction number 6, and it's at a 39-degree angle, which is a much sharper angle than this cut at 53 degrees. So we're going to cut at 39 degrees. So I think we may already have enough or small enough space left that we can not cut down any further, and we can just cut into the rest of the instructions. But let's take a look and see if I'm right or wrong. Okay, and for cutting this Rutile quartz with the second set of instructions at 48.67 degree angle, I'm going to use my Sharpie, permanent marker. Don't use the dry erase, of course, and mark up the stone. And the reason is that will help me know when I have cut this facet or this row to meet at the girdle. So let's see how that works. Okay, because I used our Sharpie, you can easily see how far I am with moving this facet down. So again, the instructions call for it just touching the girdle, right down here, but a lot of times you can't really see clearly where you're at. So the Sharpie helps you out. I understand in Australia it's not called Sharpie. Sharpie is just a brand name, so I don't know. In the US we call them Sharpies. Let me know what you call them in Australia. So we'll keep working on this stone. You can also see that it's starting to close up that gap there. It used to be a square, so this is the first cut. So just this row alone is going to significantly close that up. So I think by the time we get to instruction 6, we may already be down far enough to close out that gap and make it the permanent center point. But let's find out. Okay, with just our second row on the pavilion, we've closed up the gap here significantly. There's virtually nothing left. So, and there's still 4 more lines of instruction that'll close it up further before we need instruction number 6 to make a permanent center point. So for me, there's no need to make up a temporary center point at the first row, the first instruction, because you're going to cut down too far or waste a lot of space, and you're going to have to bring your girdle in. You're going to make your stone smaller than it needs to be if you try to cut a temporary center point with the first set of instructions. So unless you have, very thick piece of rough, that's fine, but in this case, I don't want to give up any more space that I'm going to use to cut the crown. So I'll continue to work on this rutilated quartz. Okay, I went ahead and cut instruction number 6, 1 through 6, even though I normally may not have with this rough of a preforming grit, but I just wanted to show you that the instruction 6 closed out the culet, made a permanent center point, so we didn't have to make a center point on instruction number 1, which would have brought the pavilion down a little bit further by doing that. Now we do still, and I then measured the width of the stone, width either across this way or this way since it's square. So the width of the stone, and you multiply that width of the stone by the crown to width ratio that the diagram gives you, the CW. In this case it's 0.131, and that gave me 2.2 millimeters, which is what I need for the crown. Plus, don't forget, when you do that, you also need to leave room for a girdle of anywhere between 0.3, 0.5. So in these instructions, it's telling you to make a girdle of 0.5. So I have plenty of room for a girdle, for the crown and girdle, and we've closed out the center point. So that means the rest of the laps, as I clean up, getting finer and finer laps in. All I need to worry about is cleaning up the stone. There's a little bit of chippage here that I need to take care of. Let's zoom in on that. There it is. Right there. So I'll clean up, that'll clean up as I go to the next set of laps. And this face of the stone has a lot of, I don't know if that's black tourmaline or what exactly that is, but it's still pretty rough along the surface here. So we will clean it up a little bit more. And other than that, I'll just be going through the laps, getting to finer and finer laps, just to take enough off of the previous cut to clean up for the scratches made by the rougher lap, so that we can move to polish, and we're not going to lose a whole lot more size on this stone. It's about it's over 17 millimeters right now. It's going to be a nice size stone. Okay, after using the first lap, my 200 series grit topper lap. With that lap, I went through all the lines of instruction, all 6, and the girdle, just to show that I could close the culet, make a temporary or permanent center point, not on instruction 1, but on instruction 6, and that would save me from having to make the stone smaller than it needed to be. So after using the 200 series grit topper, the rest of the laps that I used, I only cut the girdle and instruction 1, because the other facets, 2 through 6, are relatively smaller, so I didn't want to overcut them with a rough lap. So for the 300 series lap topper, I think a 340 diamond topper that I used, and the 600 grit diamond topper, I only cut instruction 1 and the girdle. Then when I got to the my 12M, which is about a 1500 grit lap, then I went through all the instructions again and brought everything pretty much into alignment. And this is where we are. So now I'm going to use the 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap and then polish it. So if anyone knows what the black in Rutilated Quartz is, let me know. It could be Rutile. Rutile comes in, it has different colors besides gold, including black, but it doesn't look like needles. So I'm wondering if that's tourmaline or not. If anybody knows, again, please let me know in the comments what the black is. Rutile or tourmaline or something else. Thanks. Okay, I finished polishing the pavilion, or the bottom half of our Rutilated Quartz, I used cerium oxide on a tin lap, and now I will use our transfer jig and transfer dops so that we can cut the upper half or the crown of our stone. Okay, I finished pre-polishing our Rutilated Quartz with our 12M lap, and this was the first lap that I used beyond instruction A, which was the first facets. So I used this to cut all the other facets, which are cut very fast. So, and the rutile is different colored. It's you use gold rutile. Right there you can see a pink rutile right there. So there's pink ones, gold ones. And the literature I read said there's black rutile. So I don't know if that's rutile or not. It's not shaped like rutile, which are needle shaped. So again, if somebody knows what the black is, let me know in the comments. So now I'll continue pre-polishing and then polishing. Then we'll cut the table. Okay, I finished polishing the upper half of our Rutilated Quartz. So now I'll cut and polish the table. Okay, I finished polishing the table of our Rutilated Quartz. So now I'll soak it in acetone to remove the stone from the dop, and we'll take a look at it, weigh it, and measure it. The Attaway Old Mine is a very interesting design that is not that difficult to cut. It is much more difficult than a square step cut design, but all the tiers or rows meet either a previous row at a meet point or the girdle, so there's no guesstimating. It's very straightforward to cut. You do have to watch the smaller facets because they cut fast, and it would be easier to overcut these facets. And also, depending on the length of your rough, or depth, and the size of the stone you want to end up with, you may want to not cut instruction 1 to a temporary center point or TCP. Overall, I would say this design is suitable for any cutter who has already cut about a half a dozen stones. Give it a try and let me know in the comments what you think about this design, and also what you think of cutting Rutilated Quartz. How many of you have tried cutting Rutilated Quartz before? And always, happy faceting, everyone.